All right, good morning. I don't know about you, but when I read the Bible, I'm looking for something that stands out. I'm looking for a pattern or the promontory. I'm looking for something to grab hold of, a foothold, if you will. It reminds me of Alex Honnold, who made the first free ascent of El Capitan in Yosemite. He basically climbed a sheer rock face, a monolith, if you will. It's nearly 3,000 feet high without any ropes. Imagine climbing the Empire State Building just hand over hand, window ledge to window ledge. That's precisely what Alex did. At any rate, when I'm in the Bible, I'm looking for a hold in which to grab and pull myself up, something to stand on for the day. And some days, to be honest, I think, man, there's nothing here. Now there is, of course, but sometimes I don't see it. Other times there is so much, I don't know which route to take because there's so much. I feel like a Labrador retriever at a picnic. Where do I put my attention? There's just so much. How do I concentrate? So for me today, John 4 was kind of that way. I'm going to write down a few things I have as questions, things I'd never seen before, and things I won't say because maybe they're nothing I don't know yet. So when I get time today, maybe I'll actually do a little study. But just from reading this morning, it's a fascinating story you find in John chapter 4, beginning with verse 46. It's about a nobleman who had a son on death's door and came to Jesus to ask Jesus to do something about it. He was a desperate man, as people that pray usually are. People that have problems do not pray. People that are not sinners cannot be saved. And that's just the way of the world. That's the way it is. But in John 6:46, the second part of the verse says, there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. So Jesus was in Cana. This man was some miles away in Capernaum, but he heard about Jesus, heard what he had done, and he came to ask help for his son. He was a nobleman. It means he was a subject of the court. He was subject to a king. He was around royalty probably in some way. And so what I want to look at this morning is just a few characteristics of a noble faith. It's not that this man was noble in the sense that he was just intrinsically virtuous, but it's that he had a noble object for his faith, namely Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus, the Son of God, and God the Son, Jesus of Nazareth. So here's this nobleman with a sick son. Now notice what the Bible explains or clarifies to us by looking at the story. Verse 47, when he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, he went unto him and besought or begged him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. And Jesus said to him, except ye see signs and wonders, ye will not believe. He seems to brush this man off. You're just looking for a sign. Now, did Jesus know this man's heart? Of course he did. But he was teaching his disciples, perhaps. He was certainly testing this man's faith. And in verse 49, the nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down ere my child die. He wasn't eager to get into a theological argument with Jesus. Of course, he couldn't have won that anyway. But he was persistent. This man's faith, this nobleman's faith, was a persistent faith. It reminds me of the Syrophoenician woman, the Canaanite woman. Pagan background. She has a demon-possessed daughter, not even a noble injury. Just a really drastic need. And she comes to Jesus, and Jesus says, I have to take care of the Jewish people first. Those are those to whom I'm sent. And I can't cast bread before dogs. And she essentially says, yes, Lord, I may be a dog, but I'm your dog. I'm in needy. I'm in help. I may be a Gentile, but I need help. And Jesus very graciously responded to her need. Likewise, this man, very different station economically perhaps, Jesus appears, as he did with this woman, to put him off. But in neither case was he doing that. He was testing their faith. And he just says, Sir, come down before my kid dies. So it was a persistent faith. We can learn from that. Second of all, it was a bold faith. The Bible says in verse 50, Jesus saith unto him, Go thy way, thy son liveth. And the man believed the word that Jesus had spoken unto him, and he went his way. If this man was what Jesus' test indicated that he might have been, Jesus knew that he was not, but if he was just looking for a sign, I'm just looking for some sign or wonder. When Jesus said, hey, that's it, he's healed, go back, he would have been called on the carpet because that's not a sign, that's a risk. Go 30 miles or whatever it is, go back, your son's healed. But the Bible says he believed the word that Jesus had spoken unto him and he went his way. He had no sign that what Jesus said had come to pass, but he believed Jesus. Hey, he's healed. You believe me. go your way. Your son is healed. It was a distant faith. It was miles away. The son wasn't there. The son was miles away, but it was a distant object and a persistent faith. It involved risk. It was a precise faith. Notice verses 51 and 52. And as he was now going down, his servants met him and told him, saying, Thy son liveth. Then inquired he of them the hour when he began to amend, that is, his son began to heal. And they said to him, Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him. So the father knew that it was the same hour in the which Jesus said to him, Thy son liveth. And himself believed, and his whole house. So it was a precise faith. Verse 52 indicates that his son was healed precisely when Jesus gave the word. So I think this is the basis upon which you find this persistence and you find this boldness, is that there's something to pray for. So many times you say, Lord, bless the day, bless the missionaries, and bless our family. What does that mean? It's not that God doesn't know your heart, it's that you don't know. You know, passionate prayer comes from having something for which you're asking. Lord, I've got a son, I could tell you his name, and here's a need. Please heal him. And so it was a precise faith. It was confirmed in verse 53 where the Bible says that it was the very hour that he made the request. So the persistence came, the boldness came because he had something very specifically for which he was asking. His back was against the wall. There's nothing else he could do. He asked. It's interesting, the order in which this man came to Jesus. He heard, he went, he begged, he believed, and then he knew. What a wonderful order. Another characteristic of this noble faith is it was contagious. Verse 53 says, And he believed, and his whole house. It was contagious. He believed the word, that is the specific need that he had, and that led to just believing Jesus, who he is and what he could do. And his whole house followed him in making the decision individually as a group of people, but individually, each of them, that they believed who Jesus is, and then, of course, what he had done. And let me just say in closing, and I know we've been a little while this morning, it was a justified faith. It was justified. All this asking, all this going, all this seeking, all this believing, it was justified. Verse 54 says, This is again the second miracle. And by the way, the word miracle here is the same word as sign. When Jesus says in verse 48, you're just looking for a sign. Same word, miracle, sign, same thing. The Bible says this is the second sign or miracle that Jesus did when he was come out of Judea into Galilee. So it was a justified faith. Jesus had tested this faith by saying, you're just looking for a sign. And this man said, Lord, please help. And the Bible says the Lord did a miracle, which was, of course, a sign of who he is. So today, you may not be noble. In fact, anyone that's praying is not noble. I don't pray because I'm noble. I'm praying because I'm needy. No, Jesus is noble. I'm needy. But a noble faith is a faith worthy of a sovereign, worthy of a king. That's what this man did. That's what I should do today.